Okay, so I have here a folder that I created. I have a folder called Pokemon Battle Simulator. Here I'm going to create, I think, 3 files: index.html, index.css, and index.js. Then I have my 3 files, and I have the notes that you were giving me just a few minutes ago. I'm going to open this with VS Code, and then we can start. So actually, before you always start, you have to, what are some of the steps that we should follow before we even start coding? What are some of the stuff that you did before you started coding? Douglas?
Build out each, body head, space,
Uh-huh.
files.
Let's do it here, like. Oh, let me also. Build out the HTML skeleton. What else? What are some of the stuff that you did before you wrote any code? They're super important. Read me. What else? Like rapid fire. What do you, Ganesh? Links. Find our API endpoints to get the data. Okay. Anything else that you did before you wrote any code? Yes. Okay, so I will say that I'll say wireframe. That's what wireframe is. Wireframe is when you build this is a wireframe. This is something that we were going to be doing a lot, and it's good that I saw some of you already doing. You basically do a fake website. You draw your website the way that you want it to look like, and then sort of like with those mock components, and this helps a lot. Like once we're building the capstone project, you want to do, well, we'll have you do this first. But if you can start doing this from now, you're going to be way better off. So wireframe, yeah. Or wireframe, yeah. Wireframing, yeah. You mean like picking your tools? Like, do you mean in the context like picking axis over fetch or something like that? Oh, what kind of tools for wireframing? I use this simple one called draw.io. Now you can see some of my old wireframes here. I use this one, draw.io. I know there is one tool called Sketch. I don't know how to spell it. Yeah, this one, but I think this is paid. I've never tried it, but I know that it helps for wireframing. I think there is, for free, but after a while you have to like pay for it, or to access extra features you have to pay for it. But these are like for more advanced user interface design and user experience. Draw.io, what I like about it is it's very simple. It just let you draw boxes. And for the main part, I think, yeah, you see, this is one of my wireframes for one app that I built here. This was my like solo passion project. Very like simple. I feel like I even went into too much detail about like the stars and stuff like that. It doesn't have to be. Yeah. This was so something like this is great. Just a mock where what the data will look like. Yeah. Build out HTML skeleton. So I think these are pretty good steps. I don't know why this is like that color of text. And then the file. Cool. So let's do this. I guess let's do really quickly over the README. Find out anything that stood out. Anything like, let's take some notes of like some bullet points from the README. Like I'm sure you read this over and over again. So what are some of the bullet points that we should sort of extract from this README? What are the main points? Join? 2 buttons. One is for getting Pokemon. Another one is for battle. Great. What else? Douglas?
Ultimately, there will only be 5 items on the page. Right?
5 items on the page. What are some of those? Like, let's do components.
H1 tag for the header. Saying total round balance.
Header, I got the header. What else? Maybe like a description. So actually, let's do this like that. Sort of in the components we have sort of this list. A header. Is this text visible from the back?
Yeah.
I don't know if maybe this is better. Yeah. Description, 2 buttons, one for getting a Pokemon, another one for battling. What do we call this main area? So we're just sort of like extracting bullet points from the README. I'll call this area the arena because those are where the 2 Pokemons are. And then the arena we could break down into 2 places, or like Pokemon A and Pokemon B, or Pokemon left and right, and then we can break down those a little bit more. And then the last main component will be like the battle history. Cool. Let's do. Cool. Anything else that we may want to extract from the README? I'll say here the Pokemon has like, let's break down what the Pokemon is. So the Pokemon has a name, picture, also known as a sprite, and HP, and some moves. And well, the other one will be same as A. Right, so we went 2 Pokemons. Here I'm just like listing out all this because this will help me clarify what we need to build. Yes?
Moves are further broken down. It's move name and
Great point. Let's do move name and move PP. Yes. So this is great. This is gonna really help us build our wireframe. Anything else that we should extract from here? About like right here, right now we're like reading the README. I didn't get the name of this word until I moved to America. Like the name of I didn't get the purpose of files called README until I moved to America because I didn't know. Yeah. Battles. Oh. Pokemon names in the battle history. Mm-hmm. Say that again. So, Pokemon winner and defeated. Okay. Yeah, like this the first step, reading the README, like finding out the API endpoints are closely related. But anything before we move on to finding out the API endpoints, anything else that we should take note of in this part? Hugo? Let's do like background color or image. Mm-hmm. Yes, Ganesh.
Tell us what tags to use.
It's telling me what tags to use. Nice. So an H1 for the title. So I guess we could use the tags here. Yeah, let's do that. Like the header is gonna be an H1. Description doesn't say, but since it's like a paragraph, let's just put that in a paragraph. Yes. So yes, that will be for the battle history. So the 2 buttons will be surprisingly buttons. The arena. It's something that we call here class data. That's going to be a div. Pokemon A doesn't say, but let's do another div. The name of that Pokemon we can put on a, doesn't specify, but let's put it in a H2. The picture. Let's do this picture in an image. The HP. HP is sort of important, so I'm going to put it in an H3. And note here how the hierarchy goes. Like the H1 is the main header. After that, we have 2 other main things, which is H2s for the name of those Pokemon. The HP, I'm going to put in H3, which will go under the H2. Moves, I think it doesn't say, but since this is going to be a list, let's put in a UL. Move name, this could just be, this could be just LI. the move name and the move PP will be on the same LI. Same as Pokemon A. The battle history, it says to have that as an H3. And this the Pokemon winner and defeated names we can put in a simple paragraph. Cool. So we broke down the components. We broke down what tags, what HTML tags those components will map to. This is great. Cool. I guess then we can move on to the endpoints then. Questions, comments, contributions here. Understanding the problem is the biggest part of what we do. This is what we're doing here right now, before we write any code. So let's find out the API endpoints that we need to get the data from. So what data do we need first before we find out, before we can find the API endpoints that will give us data, we need to be clear as to what data we need. So what are our data needs? Joy?
You need the Pokemon name, sprite, URL.
Name, sprite URL.
Base stat HP.
URL, HP, also known as base stat. Let's just do this. So we need the name of the Pokemon, the sprite, and HP. What else?
4 moves.
We need the moves. I think that's
For
it.
each move, you need the name and the EP.
For each move, so this is similar to what we were looking at here, right? For each move, we need name and PP. Okay, we're gonna see. Yeah, this is the data that we need. We need to get a Pokemon, being able to find their name, their sprite URL, their HP, and its moves. Okay, so this is our data needs. I don't think, are we missing anything here in the data needs? Data that we need to get from the API? Cool, so what about the endpoint? So where do I get this data from? Data sources. This is like the endpoints that will give us this data. So we can see if you read the documentation of the Poke API. Let me close all this other stuff that I'm not using. Did I share the link on Slack? No, I never did. This stream. There we go. So if we read the documentation of the Poke API, we see that sort of like the main endpoint is this one that is displayed in the home page, which is pokeapi.co/API/v2/Pokemon and then Ditto. And we don't, the first time looking at this, you may not know what this is, but then it says here, need a hint? Try Pokemon Ditto, Pokemon 1, type 3, and then we can just, if we try this link, we see that changed here. And we got here a resource for Bulbasaur. That is one Pokemon. And we can see all the information of Bulbasaur. It's actually quite a lot. I'm going to contract all this just so that we can observe it. So Bulbasaur is a Pokemon that has all these properties. So what kind of data is this that we're looking at here? Right? JSON. You can see that Bulbasaur has 10,000 lines of information. So this is an object, right? This is JSON document that represents a JavaScript object, right? That's why it's called JavaScript object notation. It has, I don't know, maybe 15 main keys, however many lines this is. But we can see that from here, this is all the information about Bulbasaur. We have the name here, so okay, that's cool. The name one was sort of easy to find. So we can just say the data source. So okay, the data sources, we can say the Pokemon is gonna come from, is going to come from this URL here. And I'm gonna copy this, paste this part as well. So here, the Pokemon is going to come from this URL. Note here that we have this one. So the API, the documentation specifies there is a few ways to retrieve information about a Pokemon. One is by name, and another one is by ID. So I could get Bulbasaur if I do, well, Bulbasaur is ID 1, but I could also get it if I do Bulbasaur. You see that I refresh, I hit enter, and it's so quick that, yeah, it's already there. So I can get Pokemons by name or by ID. Well, I guess like another data need here, or another node that we could do here is we need 2 randomly picked Pokemon. I'm going to put this at the top. Yeah. Okay, so here I'm going to replace this one by like Pokemon ID. We know that we need to put in a ID here, an ID here, so that we get the Pokemon. Cool. So we saw that. Well, let's take note of the keys here under which we find the information. So I'm gonna call this object like the Pokemon object. So I'm gonna do. I'm just gonna take note of where the information is. So I'm gonna do Pokemon dot name. That is gonna be this part. What other piece do we need? We need the sprite URL. So as we can see, there is another property of this JSON object called sprites. So I'm going to look into that. So I know that I will need to access Pokemon.sprites. And Pokemon.sprite seems to be an object with 8 properties inside. So we can see that we find a few different pieces here. One is seems that we have multiple sprites, one for the back, one for shiny, another one for front, and some of them that are Pokemons of the opposite sex will have the URLs in the female key, from female. The front default is what we actually want. So you can see that if we visit this URL, this was back default. This is if we wanted to, this is what Bulbasaur looks like from the back. Okay. But we are interested in what he looks like from the front. So let's copy this URL, look at it. And this is what he looks like. This is the one that we want to display. So we found where the sprite URL is and is in a sprites property front default. So I'm going to do is take note of that here. Sprites.front default. Okay, we say, actually let's do this name. It's going to be found there. Sprite URL. It's going to be found there. HP, where do we get the HP from? Somebody can help me here. John? Nice. So Joanne found that we have to key into stats. And then stats seems to be an array with 6 items inside. This is item at index 0, item at index 1, item at index 2, 3, 4, and 5. Okay, so we have 6 items, and I'll have to check every single one, see, or Joanne, can you give us a hint? The last one? So we can see here that we have base stat 45. Oh, and the name of that stat is HP. That's how we can find it. Because if we look at stat 2, this is a stat about special attack. And Bulbasaur has, I don't know, I guess 65 power. What does HP stand for? Hit points? No. Oh yeah, hit points. Okay. So this is the and this key here has statistics about the Pokemon. We find that all of them have 5 stats. No, 6 stats. And one such stat is HP. We can see attack, defense, but we're interested in HP. So how do I get that value from there? If I have Pokemon, right, and then Joanne said we have to key into the property sprites. How do I get this this value? Stats. Thank you. Stats. Okay. Owen?
The HP stands at 5, so you put 5 in the right side of the stats.
So, okay, so because stats is an array, we can see it here. Stats is an array. Owen is saying key into or access the index 5. And then at index 5 we have what do we have at index 5? What do we have at index 5? An object, right? An object with 3 properties, one base stat, effort, and stat. In here, I'm actually interested just in the value of the hit points, which is 45. So in here we have that object, then we can just do that base stat. Cool. Okay, so we have the name. We found where we can find the name, the sprite URL, the HP. What about the moves? Maybe the Pokemon has a moves property. Oh yeah, look at it here. Right above name, we find a property called moves. And it seems that Bulbasaur has 78 moves. This is an overwhelming amount. But here, so Bulbasaur can perform 78 moves. There's something called Razor Wind, Swords Dance, and Blind Cut. And what did the README say about this? About the moves? The first 4 or random 4? Okay, so maybe I'm going to add a note here. First 4 or random 4. moves only. Let's do first for random here. First or random for moves only. Okay. So we found that we can get this information from Pokemon. Wait, how do you pronounce? Is it Pokemon or Pokemon? Pokemon? Okay. Pokemon that moves. And here we find that this is an array. For Bulbasaur, it's an array of 78 items. And then we only need 4. Okay. Any other noteworthy thing about the moves?
If they don't have 4 moves.
Oh, that's a good note. Let's do like here, notes. This doesn't have 4 moves. This is sort of an, I'm not sure if they'll call this an edge case, but it's definitely a case that we want to be thinking about. Yes? For the randoms, let's do a random, and this, I'm not here that I'm adding it under nodes because I think, did we say anything about actually the moves being unique? Where did I think, okay, yeah, we didn't say anything about them being unique. Oh, I guess like, yeah, in the bonus part, like, no duplicates. Let's leave that one out for now. But here, this node, the names and PP of our 4 Pokemon's move. Oh wait, no, not that. Here, actually, we already did this. We will need to access this endpoint to get more information about the moves. So we find that so here we can get the moves here, but do we get all the information that we need about the moves? Because here we can find Bulbasaur's moves, or Ditto. Ditto. We can see, for instance, this guy had only 1 move. In this case, you could just display that one move, or yeah, I think that's the best option. Just if the Pokemon only has 1 move, just display whatever he has. But I'll say that's sort of like an extra feature that we could ignore for now. That's like not the meat of our app. Okay, so in this case, let's look at, for instance, this Pokemon. Actually, let's go to Bulbasaur that has more. We can see that it has 78 items, and here we find at index 0 we find the first move, which is an object. It has 2 properties, name and a URL. So what piece of data are we missing here that we need? The PP number, right? So we have, again, when we get this Pokemon through this endpoint, Pokemon /1, we get all the information about the Pokemon, all the basic information, but we don't get full information about their moves. We don't get how much PP a move requires. So we only get a name of the move, and we get a URL. What do we need this URL for? Or what do you think this URL will give us? Let's try it. Go to that. We get this JSON document. We see some accuracy. Let's start closing stuff here. Context type, damage class, effect entries, flavor text. This is, I can ignore most of this since we don't mention any of this extra data. Say meta, names, pass values, power, PP. There we found what we were looking for. Here, so it turns out that you will need to visit this URL. You will need to make another network request to this URL to get the PP of this move. So it turns out that also Razor Wind is move with ID 13. I'm assuming here. Actually, we go here. Yeah, you can see that is ID 13. You can see the name again, Razor Wind, and we have a PP of 10. So this is what we're interested in. We will need to make another network request to get the PP of all the moves. And this might be, why do you think they put their move information, like the PP, separate from the Pokemon itself?
Because those could be a number of Pokemon.
Correct, because one move, this Razor Wind, is maybe a move for that multiple Pokemon can do. Maybe all the which one? I didn't get that. I guess, yeah, like Bulbasaur is a type of Pokemon. Maybe the same type of Pokemon that have, I don't know, like these leaves and blades can do that. What is the type of this one? Grass and poison. So maybe all as that was what you were saying, Jonathan. Like all the grass Pokemon can do Razor Wind, yeah. And that's why they separated the move information from the Pokemon, so that one move can be performed by many Pokemon of the same type, probably. Okay, but here, what we will need to do is, we will need to remember this URL, because from here is the one that we can get the PP for the move. So, Pokemon moves, I guess let's do notes here. URL, paste that. Oh, move PP, we need from there. So here, I get some important thing to note here is we will need the Pokemon moves just to get the URL. So let's do Pokemon moves. This is going to be Pokemon moves is an array, in this case of 78 items. I'm just gonna do something like this index. We'll need to grab either the first 5 as we said, or the first 4 as we said here, or just randomly at one index. Oh, this is interesting. So we can see here that it moves at index 0, which is one move. It has is an object which has 2 properties. I expand that, and these are the 2 properties, move and version group details. So I will need to key into a little bit more. So we see that moves at index 0 is an object with 2 properties. One such property is moves, and in that case we have an object with 2 properties, name and URL. So that will be like moves at index dot move, right, that will be this part, dot URL. This is how I can get the URL of the move. And I guess another one that I also want to keep track of is Pokemon moves at index move.name. Cool. Okay, those are I think that's all our data needs. So we see and we specify this in the README that you will need two endpoints. One for getting the basic information of the Pokemon, and another one for getting the move details, like the PP. Cool. Anything else in here of our endpoints, our data needs, data sources? Okay, so let's do the wireframing for our app. Based on this, based on the this screenshot that we have, so I'm gonna leave it static. We put that GIF also in a YouTube video so that you could pause it. And then based on this, let's look at what our framework, our wireframe will look like. So we have the page. Actually, we already did sort of this step in here. We're gonna need a header, description, 2 buttons. So let's do this. Actually, I'm just gonna do we have an image somewhere, static image? Okay, I guess let's just open this. Let's just have it here. This on the side. So, okay, so we need a header, a description, 2 buttons, then the arena and the battle history. So I feel like, well, the header, the description, and the 2 buttons could be some part here at the top. So let's do it like this. And in here we'll have the header. We will have the description. And we'll have 2 buttons. Get, and then we'll put that. Okay. The arena would be another square, or div in this case, as we specified here. And then this is divided in 2 sections, right? So it's sort of divided in half in the middle, so let's do the division here. And what does this look like in terms of the display property in CSS? A grid with 2 columns, right? In fact, that's what we're going to use. Let's go into the Pokemon. So in here, inside of one of these squares, we will have 1 Pokemon. And the components of the Pokemon we said was the name, the picture, the HP. So let's put here like a box here for the name, the picture, the HP, the list of moves. So the list of moves could be its own like sort of square, where we have list or just moves, and we will have a list of moves. Okay. And then this will be just the same. Same as that one, and at the bottom we have maybe another box where we will have a header in the middle and a list. Yep, no worries. So anything that I'm missing from my wireframe, any comments? Maybe you divided it in different sections. So here I have like 3 sort of main sections: the one at the top, the middle, and the bottom. Comments or raise your hand if you ended up drawing something like this. So okay, I'm really glad that you guys did this. This drawing is super important. It's gonna help you clear your head. Yeah.
Although it's set up differently in the GIF, I ended up putting my buttons, because again, I'm separating into columns. I just let them separate into columns.
Oh.
These, so that way it takes up less space.
So you have like your buttons next to each other rather than on top of one another, right?
Rather than stacked on top of each other, one next to the other, so that way.
Yeah, that's I guess like that's another fine way. Like what Douglas made was, instead of battle being under get Pokemon, you just have this next to it. I think that's a fine feature. So here basically we have with this and what we wrote up here, we have a lot of our HTML done. So we can think of, I also like to, like once I draw these boxes, I like to label them. Label the major ones. So what would be a good name for these? So basically we divided it in 3 boxes. One at the top, one in the middle, one at the bottom. What should the labels for these boxes, these main 3 boxes be? Data, so we call this one, we suggested that you give it a class called data. Actually, I'm just going to use the same one that we were using earlier, Arena. Right, this is like where the 2 Pokemons are. I think this is a better name than just data. Data is not very expressive. What about the top? What is like header, or these sections at the top are also in websites are also known as banners. I don't know if this will constitute a banner. I think a banner is just like more of just a plain image. Let's look it up. Banner website. Okay, yeah, like this section at the top here on websites are known as banners. They look like that. We could call it, header or banner. I think header is fine. So we here we have like, these are H1, these are P tag, but we're calling this box at the top entirely just a header. Cool. So and then we have this, and then what about this section? It could be data history. Yeah, I guess let's go with footer. And then here we will have, maybe will be its own. Cool. Okay, so we have that. What about, I think the next major component is where the information of the Pokemon will go. It's like if we look at this, we see that the footer has only 2 things inside, which will be this will be like an H3 on the list. So the footer doesn't have much stuff going on inside. The next thing that has stuff going on is the arena has 2 Pokemon, and the Pokemon has some other information inside. So in this case, I also like to label this box, the inner box that represents the Pokemon. In this case, we could just call it straight Pokemon, or a little bit more descriptive could be Pokemon card. So we have the Pokemon card that has the name, the photo, their HP, and a list of moves. Cool, so now we have some names for it. Any comments, ideas, or maybe you did it differently? Cool, so we have the wireframe. With this wireframe, we can start writing some HTML. Let's go back here. Find API, data sources, wireframe in the app. Let's do this. Check mark. Let's give ourselves a check mark. Yeah, I'm gonna copy this. So we got a check mark on the wireframe. Endpoints, and we read the README. Cool. Now the step that Douglas contributed, which is build out the HTML skeleton. It makes sense as our next step, since we did the wireframe. Cool. So, okay, the HTML skeleton should be pretty straightforward. Let's do HTML5. We get this boilerplate. Let's change the title to be Pokemon Battle Simulator. We want to link here in the header. Let's link our script. Let me disable this thing before. So we want to link our script. We do script source. We call it index.js. We will also want to link our JavaScript. I think this has a type, text JavaScript. We link our CSS with link, href, index.css. We have rel. I don't remember this one exactly. I think it just tells you. And the link is self-closing. Okay, so we have linked our JavaScript and our CSS. We have the body. Then we can start building out this. So we will have the body is our outermost container here. Also, feel free to interrupt me. Raise your hand if you have any questions or any comments about anything that we're doing here. Please ask your questions. Don't live with doubts. So we have the body. We divided the body into 3 sections. Let's just do 3 divs. We recommended in the README to use class names, I think. Let's go back. I cannot find where to put this thing. Let me try it. Bottom right. I think we recommended to use class names. I am inclined to change that from a class to ID, since we're only going to have one at any given point. You use classes mostly when you have more of the same kind that you want to style together. In this case, we will only have one header, one arena, and one footer. Let's do ID, then header. I'm just going to copy this one 3 times. Another one will be the arena. Another one the footer. Yeah, we got our 3 main boxes. Then inside of our header, we will need an h1 that says think just Pokemon Battle Simulator. And a p tag we set with a description that I'm not going to write here. Click get Pokemon to choose rivals, and then click battle to fight. Okay, that's my description. Then we needed 2 buttons. Get Pokemon. Now copy this button and call this one battle. Should we give these buttons IDs or classes? What do you think? Why yes, why no?
Yes. I'd say yes, so you can easily pick them out one over the other one when you are putting event listeners.
Correct, right. So we want to put event listeners here in these buttons so that when the user clicks, something happens, right? Because of that reason, as Douglas suggested, we need IDs here to target them individually and be able to add those event listeners. So I'm going to do an ID call maybe get Pokemon BTN for button. And then I'm going to do another one, battle Pokemon .btn. So also, I'm not following my own rules, which is if you're doing single quotes, do single quotes all the way. If you're doing double quotes, do all the double quotes all the way. Cool. So we have our 2 buttons. We have the arena, and cool. I think the arena will be. So here is the arena will be empty, and we're gonna create these Pokemon cards. We're gonna create them as we fetch the Pokemons. We could create them and just leave them empty and just like target them. But I think between showing the user an empty Pokemon card and not showing the user anything, I'll pick not showing the user anything. Like the next like level on this will be, or for improving user experience, would be to have a spinner appear in where the Pokemon card will appear, so that the user has that feedback saying something is loading, right? So far we don't, we're not doing anything. Like the user just waits for a few seconds if the internet is slow, and the page will show you. But a regular user might not know what's going on, but that's why we have spinners and loading animations that communicate that something is about to happen, that you need to give it a little bit more time. So I'm saying that because the information that comes in here, that's another good reason. The information that will go in the Pokemon card needs to be fetched from the API. We don't have it at the moment. I'll rather leave that empty, meaning not create a Pokemon card yet until we have the information. And just just leave it empty. Leave the arena empty. And here, for that data that we don't have yet, we just leave it empty. For this data that we have, like the H1, the description, we can just go ahead and just do it in the HTML. So that is there. The battle history, this one is a little bit interesting. We have an H2, an H3. Well, and here, sort of, I feel like we shouldn't show anything to the user unless the first battle has been completed. That will require a little bit more work. I'm gonna, since that is not the core of our app, I'm just gonna leave it for now. But yeah, like here, we shouldn't show a battle history until the first fight has happened. But that's just for better user experience, not the core of what we're doing here. And then we'll have the list. This list is also like the information. So a way that you can think of this, if my components, my divs, require data that I don't have at the moment, right? This data is being fetched dynamically, or this data will be generated dynamically, right? Depending on which Pokemon wins. And this data is fetched dynamically, right? Because it's a random Pokemon. Those we just leave them empty and we fill them in with our JavaScript once we have the data. So yeah, if it's data that is like not yours or that is coming from the internet, from an API, you better leave the container empty, and if you can, just do a loading animation. And then later after that, you display the information once you have it. Okay, so I think this is it. Are we missing anything on the HTML skeleton? Douglas?
Why would you not want to put two divs inside the arena to hold?
Oh, that's a good point. Actually, yes, that's a good point. Oh, I guess, yeah, so we could create like a div here, like left, and another one div for the right. But since I say like left and right will be our actual Pokemon cards, I'm just gonna leave it like that, and then the left and right will be like Pokemon A. The left will be Pokemon A. The right will be Pokemon B. If you did it that way, that's still fine. Not much that you need to. I don't think you need to change it. Cool. Let's look at what this HTML looks like. Index HTML. We have our basic Pokemon Battle Simulator. These buttons don't do anything yet, but we have our skeleton, and we inspect everything. Is like every component that we need, it will be there. We just need to fill it with information. We have the header, the arena, the footer. Yep. Questions so far? Comments? Do you have like something similar to what we have here? Doesn't have to be exactly the same. If you divide your page in a little bit more areas, that's fine too. Yeah. It's good to group things together as they share something in common. What do all these components share in common? They're at the top, right? These components are in the middle, and these other components are in the bottom. Okay, so let's take a 5-minute break before we write any JavaScript.
Thank you so much. I really feel like I climbed up a mountain. Like I did so much extra work that I didn't need to already. But like learning this new way. Same with the whiteboard, like learning the process of writing, like taking these steps. I love this. I love this so much.
Cool. I'm glad. Uh-huh.
I made a project. For the longest time, I had a bug,
Uh-huh.
and I didn't know. Long story short, basically, I copied an if-else statement,
Uh-huh.
something like this. I copied that and put it there. Forgot to change the values.
Okay.
So really on time, I was working with a bug. It was like that here, somewhere with the, but this is pretty much it. I just need to add a couple of things. I was gonna
Cool,
do
that looks
a
good.
random word API.
Uh-huh. Oh, yeah, that would be cool.
I had a more complicated answer to this, but
Why does it look so similar to somebody else?
I just had to make it simple. So
Why does it look
you
so
can
similar
choose
to
your
somebody
own
else?
word, and then you show it.
You could choose your own word and
put
solve it
invalid
yourself.
characters.
Basically, test your memory.
That's playing with other people. PvP.
That's cool, that's
Like,
cool.
But you could do random, and it'll pick a 5-letter word.
But how you gonna play with somebody else?
Because I got a really large array. What do you mean? Like if me and you play it, I enter the word and you guess it.
In a hypothetical situation, you have that feature where I can play two players.
That's the 2-player. Choose my own.
But it's multiplayer with one computer, and then you just
yeah.
Yeah.
playing turns.
Oh, you
I thought it goes automatically to computer.
Okay, so you assume that PvP meant
Like somebody, another
Yeah.
player on another computer?
no, because then the person that chooses the word wouldn't do anything the rest of the game. You just put the word in and then just wait. But yeah, the only thing I'm having issues with is right here. I have a key press and put random letter. So if I put like an invalid, for example, if I do enter. Put enter.
Uh-huh.
I tried putting this in a form
Mm-hmm.
and requiring a pattern,
Oh, I see. Yeah.
and it just doesn't work.
What you will need to do for that is like look into the chart code app. You remember that we saw it
Yeah.
with Ben? Yeah, use this to be able to tell what character they put in, because then you will find out that the here. Here, you will find out that the letters of the alphabet are in a certain range of numbers, or even like you don't even need to do this. Like you can just do, you see, like you could do this. Is A greater than 90? No, the string A. False. I think A is like. Let's do A to number. A times 1. No, not a number. So that turns out like A is
Character code.
yeah.
I read a
A-
little bit about character code. I just didn't. I was thinking there was a.
Yeah, A is 97. So I think I can do this. Oh no. No, you only have to
Try 2 equals instead of
Two?
like right here.
Uh-huh.
Take one off.
No.
to a string.
Yeah, but you'll need to convert this one to its value.
This is the way I had the index file. This was the imperator.
Oh, you see here, like
Put up that.
Z. So you see that Z is 122. We know that A is 97. So if you get A better and you do the chart code match,
I can pick a certain range.
and then don't allow anything else. Cool, let's keep going. Alright, cool. Okay, so let's keep going. We have that. So we have our HTML. Now let's get into some of the JavaScript. I'm going to open the JavaScript file here, index.js, and we have an empty file. What should the first thing be to put here, that I should put here, and why? Well, I guess maybe let's think about this. Let's think about like the stuff that this JavaScript file has to do. Like thinking about what are some of the tasks that this JavaScript file needs to do. Let's do tasks. And let's just sort of like list them out. Like what are all the stuff that we need to do, perform with JavaScript to get to this page. Douglas? Listen for button clicks. Yes, this is very much one thing that we need to do. I'm going to comment. I'm going to change this comment. You might not have seen this comment yet, but you could do multi-line comments if you do it like this. These are multi-line comments. They are a little bit. So tags to do with JavaScript. Okay, so we found one task. We need to listen for button clicks. What's another task that we need to do with this in here? Dinesh? We're gonna get to see like what if to do this, then we'll need to do that. Yeah. What else? Thinking about like all this stuff that this JavaScript has to do to display what we want, get what we want. Something else. Somebody else. Look at your JavaScript file and tell me the one name of your function. Cameron? A little bit more, louder. Yeah, someone get, fetch. Yep. Owen? Add the event listener to the whole page. Yeah, I guess let's do that one for last. So we can see like as to the why. Yes, Joanne? Nice. Let's do like, well, we'll need to do random Pokemon picker. Okay, what else? Functions that you have in your JavaScript file.
I built a coin flip to decide the winner.
That's
random.
so that could be so. let's do like random winner picker coin flip. What else? Owen?
You need to do like a request for like the on Pokemon to get like the name of the power.
So okay, I guess like that will be, let's do it here. So sort of that will be sort of a detail to this one. That someone get or fetch Pokemon. You said what was the word that you used? Request. Get request to API. Anything else? So, Karen. Nice. Yes. Create Pokemon card. So this will be create Pokemon cards like slash display Pokemon. Joey? Add sort of maybe update battle history. Cool. One that we are not listing here so far has to do with fetching information. What is that one? We're doing one with fetch, but what's the second fetch that we need to do? Get fetch Pokemon moves PP. Again, this is gonna be get request only. We can do this. This will also be a get request to the API. Okay, I think we have everything. Should we organize these steps as to like in the order in which these should happen? Like first, we do need to listen for clicks. One such click will get the random Pokemon. We also need to do the moves PP, random Pokemon picker. This one, I'm not sure if, I think this one should go at the top here, since we need to pick them first before we can retrieve them with the API. We'll need to pick 2 Pokemon IDs first, and there's actually a few ways in which we can do it. I think the most common I saw was by generating a random number between 1, which is the first ID, and 800 something, which is the last Pokemon ID. Now, that's probably with what we're going to go with. Then fetch the Pokemon. Then maybe like the like battle Pokemon. We need to battle the Pokemon, and after we battle there, or sort of as a side step, or as a sub step of battling the Pokemon, you need to pick a random winner. Yeah, I'm not sure if I will do that like nested. Bless you. And here, the create Pokemon cards, display the Pokemon, I think should go like right here. Right after you get the Pokemon, just display it. After that, then battle Pokemon. Yeah, I guess like something like this. Battle the Pokemon we sort of divided battle Pokemon into 2. One is picking the winner randomly, and the second one is after that, after we have a winner, update battle history. I think this is it. Maybe we can see like these lists are never like static. These lists change over time. Like you're never gonna, at least I've never written a plan and going exactly as planned. Like we might end up adding new items to this list, maybe removing some, who knows. So cool. So once we have all this, a task that Janesh and Owen mentioned was like waiting for the DOM to be loaded, or add an event listener to the DOM content loaded event in the document. But why is it that we want that? Why is it that we need to listen for when the DOM content has loaded? Somebody in the back. I haven't seen a lot of participation in the back today. Peter? A little bit louder.
So that when you like the buttons are ready to do the function from the beginning of the page when we first load it.
Okay. Yes. And what happens if I don't wait for the DOM to load and I want to do that? I want the buttons to be ready to go.
If you don't download it, it'll just like load up on the page.
Yes, it will still load, but would I be able to add my event listeners? Right, so the event listener, for adding the event listener to the buttons, I need the buttons to have been loaded in the DOM. If I try to add an event listener to a button that has not been loaded to the DOM, I'm gonna get an error. So first we need like, the thing is like, this is like what makes it hard to think about this is that all the steps happen so fast. Like the DOM loads so quickly. Like I refresh this page and we don't even see a flicker. But we do need to use the DOM content loader because we need to grab the button from the DOM and add an event listener to it. If I don't wait for the DOM to be loaded, I cannot grab the button from the DOM. So the first thing as we discussed is add the document that add event listener, DOM content loaded, and you want to make sure that everything you do, anything that touches the DOM, that needs the DOM loaded for adding elements, removing elements, that code must be executed here. Code that needs or touches the DOM, which is most code that we want to write, right? For instance, like if we have this step here, like battle Pokemon, we want a random winner picker, right? That will be sort of the coin flip to dictate who wins. This step doesn't need this step here doesn't need the DOM at all. Like picking a winner between two options doesn't need the DOM for anything. What do need the DOM is this, because based on the result of picking a winner, we need to update the battle history, and the battle history is that last part at the bottom of the page, and we want to update that to show new information. Cool. Okay, so let's execute what we planned here. Let's listen for the button clicks. So here we will end up doing like most of these steps that we listed here could be contained in their own functions. And I'm actually going to do that. So I'm going to create a function that will do this task. Listen for the button clicks. Or more specifically, set up the buttons to be able to listen for button clicks. So I'm going to create a function called const set up btn just buttons listeners. So I created this function setup button listeners that will perform the first step. So, and then this is the function that I want to call first. Setup button cool. So if we do console.log setting up button. So I have my document DOM content loaded listener. As soon as that happens, I want to call this other function setup button listener, and that function so far is just going to console log. Let's just make sure that we have everything connected, because at this point we think we connected everything, but we don't know yet. We haven't tested it. So it's always good to make sure that everything is connected. So I'm going to open the developer tools here, go to the bottom, console. Then I refresh the page, and we should see something. See, we don't see anything. But I'm expecting to see this console log telling me that the setup buttons listeners ran. So this means that I have an error. Well, not an error per se, because we don't see here red or anything like that, but somehow I have a mistake. So it might be that I'm not connected the HTML to the JavaScript correctly. Anybody has an idea as to like what this could be? I don't know. I honestly don't know, but if you know, tell me. So seems like, yeah. I declared it after. You mean this function? Well, at least it will complain. It will say like setup button listeners is not defined, but it's not doing that. I think it's the HTML that the script. Oh, spelling mistakes. Spelling mistakes. I've gone hours on spelling mistakes. There. So we have our function set up button listeners. This feels weird. Buttons listeners, like two plural words. I'm just gonna do it like that. Oops, no, that function doesn't exist anymore. But we have our function running as soon as it downloads. What is this function gonna do? Listen for button clicks. In fact, I could just do comment this, paste it here. Set up the listeners for the buttons. Okay, so let's do that. So I need the two buttons. To grab them from the DOM, I'm going to do document.querySelector using their ID. And I want to save those buttons to variables. So I'm going to do const, maybe get Pokemon button, btn equal to document.querySelector. I gave them an ID, so it should be hashtag, I think I did get Pokemon btn. I think this is the ID I have. Let's look at it here. Yep. The other one is battle Pokemon btn. So I have my first button here. I'm gonna set up this one. Get. The next thing that I want to do is add an event listener. Get Pokemon btn that add event listener. I want to listen for the click event. The next thing that I want to do here, or want to pass here, is a callback function. The function that will be called when the button gets clicked. Here, so let's do like console log here. Get Pokemon button was clicked. let's make sure that this works. Let's remove this console log from the top since we already saw that that one was appearing. So the first thing that we're doing here is grabbing the get Pokemon button and adding a event listener for the click event. Now let's refresh. Let's see if when I click the button, we have it correctly hooked up. So this is cool. The get Pokemon button was clicked. Okay, so here, so before we move on to the second one, let's think about what should happen when the user clicks this button. When the user clicks the get Pokemon button, what should happen? Which one of these steps? Right, this one. Summon or get or fetch the Pokemon. So okay, let's do this. So since that is, and this is something that you will develop with time, but I kind of, something intuitive is telling me that the code that I need for fetching a Pokemon will be considerable. I don't know how many lines, but I think it won't be a small function, right? So I'm just gonna write a function from, like, right now called const fetch Pokemon. And I'm just gonna leave it empty for now. I'm just gonna have this as a function like that. But I know that this is the function that I wanna call whenever the user clicks that button. So I'm gonna, instead of writing this function here directly, I'm just gonna change the listener to now be the fetch Pokemon function. So whenever the get Pokemon button gets clicked, we're gonna call the fetch Pokemon function. This gets, yeah. So let's do like console log here. Fetch Pokemon was called, just to make sure that everything still works. Cool. So the function fetch Pokemon was called. This function will be called when the user clicks. Okay, so we set up the first button. Let's set up the second one. Or any questions or comments to this point? So I have that. Let's set up the second button. And I just copy this entire thing, and we'll have to just repeat it, change the names. Do Command D to change the names at the same time. The other button is called Battle. So I just changed the name to Battle Pokemon button. Now here, instead of get Pokemon, I have the ID was Battle. And now instead of fetching the Pokemon as the user clicks, I want to create a function called Battle Pokemon. So that whenever this button gets clicked, the function Battle Pokemon gets called. I'm going to create this function here, just like same as the fetch one. For now, it's going to be empty. Instead of fetch Pokemon, I'm going to call it Battle Pokemon. And then here. So I have two buttons. Grab them from the DOM. Add two event listeners. For one button, we call the function fetch Pokemon when the user clicks, and the other one we call the function Battle Pokemon when the user clicks that button. So let's see if this is working. Refresh our page. Now let's click get Pokemon. Okay, fetch Pokemon was called. Battle Pokemon was called. If we click it again, it's being called again. Okay, so this is just sort of test that your event listeners are set up correctly. Questions or comments here so far? We have these two functions. We don't know the code. We have an idea of what the code that will go in here will be. But this was the first step that we wanted to do. Listen for button clicks. let's get a check mark on that one. There you go. Cool. Now the next step that we talked about was getting a random Pokemon picker. So as we discussed, we can use the ID, so we can generate a random number in the range 1, which is the first Pokemon ID, to 900 or no 800 something. Oh, so I actually saw that this information here is not too bad wrong, but I found that there is actually more than this 809 Pokemon. There's near to 1,000, yeah. But then the problem was that the IDs I was looking, the IDs are not consecutive for from 1 point forward. But from now, let's just use this number. A range from 1 to 809. So let's copy this. And then, so for this step here, let's write another function. Let's write a function that, so since we're gonna deal with the IDs, and we need two randomly picked Pokemon IDs. So I'm gonna create a function that just does the calculation for the range, or they will do just the random number. And yeah, so I guess let's see. I feel like this step, I'm not sure if we picked the right name, but let's do. So we need two IDs, right? So let's do const. Let's do generate random Pokemon ID. So this is a function that will generate a random Pokemon ID. Let's just do it like this. So we need a number between the range. We need this function to return a number between 1 and 809. So for doing that, if you go to the math.random documentation, there is a great example in here that it shows example here. Getting a random number between two values. So basically, this is what we need to write. It returns a random number between the specified values. The return value is no lower than and may possibly equal to min, and is less than and not equal to max. So here we can find this function that, as an example of using math.random, we can pass in two numbers, min and max, and the value that will be returned could be equal. It won't be lower. It could be equal to min, and it's guaranteed to always be less and not equal to max. So let's do that here. So I find that since we're doing a lot of random stuff, like we have to pick two random Pokemons, we have to pick 4 random moves, and we have to pick two or the winner randomly. I'm just gonna do a helper function, const get random. Let's do you know what? Let's just do it here, and then once we see that we're repeating ourselves a lot, we can just outsource that functionality. So for now, my function needs to return a number between 1 and 89. So we are going to do return math.floor. But let's do this. The ID. Let's do const ID equal. Let's return the ID. Math.floor, because we want to floor that number. Math.random and we multiply this math.random, which is a number between 0 and 1, not including 1. We multiply by, I think it's max minus min. Oh, well, in this case, which one is our max? 1. So let's do this. Const max 809. Const min equal 1. Let's do here.
Can you just do like times 809 plus or times 808 plus 1?
Yes, that is another way. Since we know that this is our range, let's do it this way, and then we can see what Alessandro was mentioning. Yes, max minus min plus min. This will generate the ID, and then we just return it. So here, let's test this function. This function doesn't need anything from the DOM, right? Let's function by just invoking it here. Get random or generate. Actually, this shouldn't be generate. This should be something like pick. Pick random Pokemon ID. Like that. Let's try this. Go to the browser. Our page. Oh, we're not console logging, so we want to console log the ID that was generated. Just to .307, refresh, 345, 553. So we have a function that is able to generate a number between our specified range. Yes?
After the multiplication, you just put 809. It'll give you the same results.
Say that again?
If you get rid of max, min, plus min, just put 809, you get the same results.
Just like here?
Yep.
Like max?
No, this is 809.
Well, that's max.
Okay.
Uh-huh.
But you don't need to do all that extra lines and stuff.
Oh, but I do like to, so there's this thing called, like, when you put in numbers like that, they're known as like magical numbers. And somebody that's looking at your code cannot tell what that number is about. But if I put in a variable, they at least have actually, I guess this variable is not very expressive, but this should be like max Pokemon ID and then min Pokemon ID. Yeah. But yeah, like just like sort of hard-coded numbers are known like magical numbers, I think. Programmed. Magic number, not magical. Yeah. Unique values with unexplained meaning or multiple occurrences, which could preferably be replaced with name constants. This is what I want. You don't want magic numbers in your code. So next, so like what the other solution that was suggested by Alessandra was just multiply by max and then do plus min. These two are going to be the same. Because we want to do plus min because the random could give us 0. And the min, we avoid the 0 because there is no Pokemon ID equal to 0. Yes?
So that, instead of adding min, you also do like math.ceil, 0 to 0.
Oh, instead of like here, math.ceil.
So instead of adding the min,
Uh-huh.
you do math.ceil and math random.
Yeah.
That's what I just want to do, right? So even if you get
I'm not sure if that will. I remember something about like the probabilities. I don't know if that affects the probabilities of certain numbers being picked, but I think it doesn't. But yeah, this will always round up. And if we see, let's just like constant log ID 1 and ID 2. Yeah, I think getting this to give us a non-existent ID could be quite tricky, but we're able to generate 2 IDs. I'm going to stay with the original, with this one. Let's do this Pokemon ID max to be a little bit more explicit. And constants of this kind that are like given a value is like there forever. We want to do it in capital. Cool. So this function is able to generate a random number. We just need to call this function twice, and then we get 2 random IDs for our Pokemon. So we said that like this is part of this randomly Pokemon picker. So since this one is able to do 1, we could just write as like basically call the function like as I did before, like ID 1. Then const ID 2 to create the 2 Pokemons, to get the 2 IDs. But I think a better idea will be something like const, create another function, get, or the function, no, this one, the fetch Pokemon. The fetch Pokemon can use the pick random Pokemon ID to get the Pokemon actually. So here what we want is, we know that we have this function hooked up to the get button Pokemon. And so let's do this. Let's change the name to this to be like fetch to random Pokemon. So change the name of the variable to be a little bit more explicit. And I did this because, as I said, we foresee that for the fetch Pokemon, to only fetch 1 Pokemon could take quite some code. So I think we should have a const fetch single Pokemon function that we just call twice. So let's have a function that like this fetch 2 random Pokemons will use the fetch single Pokemon 2 times. We'll use this function 2 times. And now the fetch single Pokemon can call the pick random Pokemon ID by doing do const ID equal pick random Pokemon ID. So we do that. I'm gonna remove this part from here. And then here, let's do something like, in here, let's fetch single Pokemon. So here, like this is all of what we do is a lot of this, which is a function calls a function, and then that function calls another function, and so on, to break down the process. So here I have, when I click the get Pokemon button, I'm going to call this function, fetch 2 random Pokemon. That function is going to call the fetch single Pokemon. And it's going to call it twice to get 2. Instead of writing a function that fetches 2, we could just write one function that fetches 1 and call it 2 times. Instead of having like the function that fetches 2 Pokemon will need 2 fetches, like 2 calls to the fetch function. Instead, we just have it in one function and we just call that function 2 times. So here, let's do this. Let's see what we have hooked up. So here's fetch single Pokemon was called. Let's save this, refresh. I call get Pokemon, I get fetch Pokemon was called, that's this guy. And then fetch Pokemon call fetch single Pokemon. So these functions are just console login, but from console login now, I think we can move on to actually getting the Pokemon. Because now we have the ID, actually, we can see it here. The fetch single Pokemon is using the pick random Pokemon ID to get the ID. Let's console log here the ID on fetch single Pokemon with ID. Refresh. Now here, fetch single Pokemon with ID that. I call it again. Now I get a different ID. Right. Now what we want to do is like do that twice. So in the fetch to random Pokemon, we can do fetch single Pokemon twice. Now we are about to fetch Pokemon with ID 61 and Pokemon with ID 291. Questions to this point? Comments? Worries? So far, like we're just hooking up functions based on what we were looking at here. So we have this one. Let's give ourselves a check mark for the second one. The random Pokemon picker. So we saw that this one had like random ID picker with range 1 to 809. Well, actually, here we have this is including 809. So we'll need to do max Pokemon ID because this will not include 809. We could just do. We add 1 here so that it includes 809. Cool. So here we wrote that function that gets the random number, the random ID in the range that we know. We use that function in the fetch single Pokemon to get the ID of the Pokemon. Let's do this maybe Pokemon ID. And if we call that 2 times in the fetch to random Pokemon function, we got this. We have 2 console logs with 2 different IDs. So now that we have the ID, we just need to make the fetch call, the fetch request. So let's do that in here. That will be in the fetch single Pokemon function. Here we are going to do the fetch. So let's do fetch. You could do again this with Axios, with XML HTTP request. I'm going to use fetch. So fetch, and then we need the URL. Also, I like to, so since we have the URL up here or somewhere in our notes, topics here, I think we put it here. This is our URL. I'm going to create a variable for the URL. I'm going to remove this console log from here. Const URL equal, and then quotes this. Oops. Copy from here, paste it here. And here we want to change what's going to change is this Pokemon ID here. Right here, instead of that, I'm going to use the Pokemon ID that was just picked via the pick random Pokemon ID. So I'm gonna just do like string interpolation here with backticks directly. Backticks here. Backticks instead of quotes, then I can do $, curly brackets, Pokemon ID. Now let's, like, if we console log this URL here, we're gonna see, let's refresh. Click, we got two URLs going to two random Pokemon. In fact, if I click it here, it takes me to those endpoints, and I get, with my browser, I get one Pokemon. Now instead of going there with my browser, because I want to actually fetch this information with JavaScript to display it to the user, I just use fetch. So let's do fetch URL. And remember that fetch always needs two .thens. The first .then receives the response. I'm gonna abbreviate, no, let's just call it response. And the thing that this one needs to do is parse the body data. We do that with response.json. Here, I can do it in one line since, and avoid, if I do it in one line, I save myself to, or taking advantage of the implicit return. I don't need to do curly brackets return. If you're doing curly brackets return, that's also fine. Just remember that arrow functions have implicit return if you don't specify the curly brackets around the body of the function. This is the body of the function. And then the second .then, now here I have my data. For the second .then on a fetch, we get the data. So let's do this. Let's do console log data. What is this data going to be? If we go in our browser to that URL and we get this, that data here will be the same thing. Will be an object, actually. Yes, it will be the parsed object that was made out of this JSON document. So let's see, refresh. I get Pokemon. And we have two objects that look promising. They have abilities, game indices, moves, name. We got our two Pokemons. Here we have them. We have two objects being console logged here. Why? Because we are calling 2 times fetch single Pokemon, and we're console logging their objects. And here we have the name. We got Ghastly and Leaky Tongue. Yeah, those two Pokemons we got. Their ID is, I don't know their IDs, but we got the two Pokemons. Now from here, what we need to do is display them. So we were able to fetch the two Pokemons. These are the network requests. Fetch is making the network requests to get those two Pokemon. So here, instead of console logging the data, what do I want to do? Let's look at this actually. So we got this. So we got this step, fetch Pokemon. But once you have the data of the Pokemon, what do you want to do with that data?
Create cards? Or is
Create the cards. That's correct. Yeah, we want to create the card, or we want to display the Pokemon, right? So here we can do. So here is, you can go either of these two ways. One is you can get the Pokemon and then fetch the moves, or you can get the Pokemon, then display the Pokemon card, and after that fetch the moves. I don't think, which way should we do it? Should we get the moves first, and then fetch the entire, then display the entire card, or should we fetch the Pokemon, actually create the card, which will be up until this point. Actually, we can do, the only piece of data that we will be missing is the PP for the moves. But should we display the card? Cool. So let's display the card. So for that we have this step here. So I think we successfully completed this. Let's give ourselves a check mark there. And then here we're sort of like jumping to create a Pokemon card or display the Pokemon. So this part here, I could write this part here, like entirely in here. I could write logic here that will display the Pokemon card. It will create the image, it will create divs. But I had the feeling that I could end up with a lot of code. Creating div, creating the H tag, the image. So what do we do in those cases? Instead of writing the code directly here, create a function. So let's create a function, maybe here. Const. I want to call it display Pokemon. To this function, what does this function need to work? This function will need the Pokemon itself, right? So I'm gonna expect to pass it here as a variable, something called Pokemon. And we saw that this data here is our Pokemon, right? This data here is our Pokemon. This is the object that we're seeing console log. In fact, a better name for this would just be Pokemon. If we know that this data is our Pokemon, let's just call it Pokemon. Now, instead of console logging the Pokemon, I'm going to do is call the function display Pokemon and pass in Pokemon. Instead of console logging, actually, let's just do the console log here. Just to make sure that the display Pokemon function will be called. Save that, refresh, fire this, and we have the same two console logs, because now instead of console logging directly here, we are just calling the function display Pokemon. Now this function, display Pokemon, is the one that is going to be in charge of creating the divs, appending them to the DOM, creating the image, all of that. Cool, so now here we can think of what the display Pokemon or create Pokemon card. So here's the thing. I'm now thinking, should this function be called create Pokemon card, or should it be called display Pokemon? What do you think? That's good middle ground. Because I was thinking that creating the Pokemon card doesn't necessarily mean displaying it. We could just create it and then display it. And by displaying, we just mean append it to the DOM. So let's do display Pokemon card. So this will be in charge of like the two things: creating the Pokemon card and also displaying it, appending it to the DOM. So for the Pokemon card, let's create a div. Let's do const Pokemon card equal document dot create element. I create a div. I want to give that div a. We don't need to give it anything, but I'd like to give the Pokemon card the ID of with the name of the Pokemon. Just to have an ID with the name of the Pokemon. So this will be Pokemon that ID. As we saw here, this is the Pokemon object. One of the main key is the ID. So here I created Pokemon card, and which is a div, and it has only an ID. The ID will be the same as, oh, actually not the ID of the Pokemon. I want the name. So we have so far just an empty div. Now let's create, inside of that div we want to put a, what did we say, an H2, or I think it was H2. Yeah, so an H2, let's do const name, because the H2 will hold the name. Document that create element H2. Now this name will be the inner text will be equal to Pokemon dot name. Here you could name this anything that you want, name or name header. I think name is enough. Pokemon card. So we do that. Then after that, I want to create the image. Const, we'll call it sprite equal document that create element img. I'm gonna set this image source src equal to the Pokemon dot. Do you guys remember? Well, good thing we took note. Sprite here somewhere. Did we? No, here. Pokemon, no. Pokemon sprites front default. This is the key under which we can find the image URL. Sometimes I forget to add the semicolons. There is some plugins that will add them for you. They're not really necessary. So I have the image. Then what is the next thing? HP. Should the HP? I think the HP should be header 3. Because I'm gonna do HP equal. I should just copy this line, paste it here, and change that. HP is gonna be an H3. I'm gonna say the HP that inner text to be equal to the Pokemon dot. Where did we find that? We took note of that as well. Pokemon stats. Oops. Here. Copy that. Paste it here. Pokemon stats property at index 5, the base stat. That's that. Next thing we need to do is the moves. Let's do the moves here. Moves. What should the moves be? So here's what I think. I think that these moves should be a box with two things. Should be a box with an H3 or a header and a list. So this, yeah, let's divide that into a little bit more. So we have moves. I'm going to create element div, and then I'm going to create the header, moves header equal to, and then we have to append all of this stuff. So far we're just creating the objects we're creating the nodes. If we leave them like this, they will be created, but they will never be shown. For showing, you need to append. Moves header, document create element, H3, and then moves header dot inner text is going to be equal to moves. So that's that. Next thing that I want to do is const list. So moves list is going to be document that create element ul. Separate this here a little bit. It's just going to be the UL, and for now, let's just do append the list to the moves. So I'm going to do moves that append child, move list. And I'm appending the list that is currently empty to the moves div. Oh, I also want to append the header. Cannot forget that. Append child moves header. So you see, like, this is something that I was thinking about. This function is getting quite chunky. It's doing quite a lot. So maybe we could have another function that will do the moves list. That will be better. But for now, let's just run with this. So I'm appending the moves header to the moves div, and then the moves list to the moves. And here we'll need to think about, okay, so how do we create the list? The move of the array that has the moves we can find here. Oh, for instance, this one we have 5. This one has 5. So for now in here, as we were talking about here, picking in the random moves, I think we're not going to have time to get into that. So I'm just going to pick the first 5 moves. The first 5 moves that the Pokemon have. But if for picking the random moves, we'll just create a function, pick 5 random moves that can call, do a math like this but now in this case in the range 0 to 5, 0 to 4 actually, including 4, and then get it from the moves array. But for now, I'm just going to do the first 5 from the moves array. Let's see if we can get these Pokemon to pop up at some point. Actually, before we do the list, let's just append all this and see what we have. So I appended the move list and the move headers to the moves div. Next thing that I want to do is start to append to the Pokemon card. We created a Pokemon card here that is going to be a div. I want to do Pokemon card that append child. Well, the name is something that we want to append. We're going to copy this a few times. The first thing I want to append is the name. After that, we want to append the sprite. After that, we append the HP. And lastly, we append the moves. So here. Name, we created that, and we created Pokemon card. Now the last step that we need to do is append the Pokemon card to the to our arena, basically. So that's what we need to do here. So first, let's grab the arena from the DOM. Equal document query selector. I think the ID was arena. Yep, arena. And then because the arena is in the DOM, we just do arena that append child, and we append the Pokemon card. Questions here before, or anything that I can clarify before we run this code? So yeah, like I will break this code into like create Pokemon card, then create Pokemon moves, and then display Pokemon will just call those two functions and append them. Let's see if this runs. Save that. Make sure that we're calling display Pokemon on the fetch single Pokemon. We are. Refresh. Click on get Pokemon. And we have an error. Display Pokemon is not defined. Oh, that's because I changed the name to display Pokemon card. Save, refresh. Click the button. And we have our two Pokemons. We have two Pokemons. One is 60 HP. Oh, actually, I forgot to do the HP part. Here, let's do not the name. HP here. Let's do HP. Space here. There we go. We get two Pokemon. Let's make them appear next to each other instead of sort of like with the grid. So let's go to the CSS, index CSS. Let's target the arena. Let's make that a display grid. Let's make it two columns, like grid, template, columns, equal 50%, 50%. Save that, refresh here. There you go. We have two Pokemon displaying. Yes, Savita? Sure. Here. Uh-huh. Maybe it will be cool to capitalize this name here. Capitalize, but I'm not going to get to that. And yes, very simple. Yeah, grid and grid template column 50 and 50. Anything I can revisit here? Does this make sense? Does it make sense of what we're seeing? So we have like, this is the advantage of functions and of modularity. You have one function that does one thing, and if you need to do that thing more times, you just call the function however many times you want. Owen?
How did you get it to go side by side like that?
Oh yeah, so since we have a arena div here, right? We have the div with ID arena. I just, on my CSS, I just target the arena div, the display grid, and grid template columns 50% and 50%. This will create a grid with two columns, no rows, or actually one row. Sure. Refresh the page? Yeah, I just refreshed it. I'll have to click the button. How could I get it to that when I refresh it automatically gets the Pokemon? I mean, so we have this function called fetch two random Pokemon that just calls fetch single Pokemon. If it calls it twice, you just need to call this function here at the top. On the first step that we want to do is, so note here, like note how few code we have here. We just have like the setup button listeners, and the setting up the button listeners does all the rest, because sort of this is like our entry point from the setup button listeners. Then it turns out that we set up two functions, and we have so far this time we have been spending it in this function, the fetch two random Pokemon. So here I can just call this function straight as we, again, modularity. Like the fact that I wrote a function for this allows me to just call it however many times I want. And in this case, I want to call it in two instances. One is when the DOM content has loaded, and the next one when the user clicks the button. Refresh, we have this. Oh, I think this is interesting. What if I click it again? We're just going to keep getting. Right, but I refresh now and I get 2 immediately. So how do we get rid of the adding more? How do we get rid of them? Instead of adding at the bottom, I just want to add, you want to replace the old ones with the new ones. This is something, yes. John, was that? Oh, no worries. So what we need to do is remove the all two cards. The all Pokemon cards before we add new ones. So for that, I could do it in here. I could do it in the display Pokemon card. I could write some code here that removes, it empties out the arena. And that will take some lines. So I'm going to create a function here called remove Pokemon, or clean arena, whatever you want to call it. I think clean arena is better. What this function is going to do is going to grab the arena, cons arena, which I had done here already. Oops. Grab the arena, and then I could set the arena's inner text to an empty string. And this is actually a good inner HTML to empty string. And I just call this function, these two lines, I just call it right before this function here. Let's do it. Like the first thing that we're gonna do is clean the arena. So I added that function as the first thing that we wanted to happen. Clean the arena. This function grabs the arena from the DOM, sets the inner HTML to an empty string. Refresh. Oh, here we only got one. Seems that we might have found an ID. Let's do, well, let's refresh, but if, oh, this is interesting. My clean arena is doing something interesting. I'm only getting, okay, this is working. It's partially working as removing the old ones. Say that again? Yes, that is correct. This is quite the bug here. So that's the hand mentions. We're calling this function 2 times. We call the display Pokemon for every single Pokemon. And now every single fetch is calling clean arena. And clean arena is removing everything from it. So, and also we don't know. So here basically, the first Pokemon that arrives will clean the arena and it will remove itself. Yes?
Can we put it into the fetch shoot program Pokemon?
Mm-hmm. So as Zuko mentioned, to clean the arena, we don't want to clear the arena for every Pokemon, right? We can fetch or we can clean the arena here, right before we fetch. So this is what allows to what having functions allow us to do. Like just move the function to the right spot. So here we have the fetch to random Pokemon. We'll first clean the arena and then fetch single Pokemon, fetch second Pokemon. You could also, like, something that we could do is, as with an approach that Douglas suggested, where we have these two, like the card being divs in the HTML, then we can just clear them individually. That's another approach. Let's see if this works now. Yes, okay. Click button again. There we have it. You clean the arena. One comment that I want to do here is this is not a good way to clean the arena. I was looking at remove, yeah, here. I was looking at this. So actually, this got out of a inner HTML. Let's just remove child. So here I was reading that there are some examples saying that they don't recommend you using setting the empty string. Instead, they suggest this: having a for loop that will run as long as the element has child, and for each one is removing the child. And I think I saw it also here as an answer here. Let me share this with you. Give it a read. So this and this guy actually made a test to see which one is like faster and more performant, and remove child is more performant. Here, so he had like this HTML, and then he's gonna test remove child against inner HTML, and here we can see the results here. You can see here the smaller is the better. We can see that remove child takes less operations. It's able to do it's faster. Like lower is faster here. So remove child is more efficient than setting the inner HTML to an empty string. That is just sort of a side note there, and I think I could run this test and see the results. How this will perform on my computer. Let's see. Take some time. Here. Was done. Oh, what? Now we have the opposite. Maybe. Wait. We got the opposite here. This one is 7% fastest. Well, you'll have to run this test on your computer and see if it's just my case. Yeah, there's like another sample here. So yeah, it might run differently on different browsers. Here, let's just stick with the inner HTML for now. Since instead of doing that, then we can think of how do we display the list of moves. So here, any questions to what we have so far? This is what we have so far. We should try to get the moves and the list to display. So where should we do the moves? So far, we're under 100 lines still. And that's with 14 lines of comments. Any ideas or suggestions for fetching the moves and displaying them? Howie?
Basically, I did like a bunch of calls, like a call each move, and then I put all of them inside an array.
Okay. Uh-huh.
Yes, I put them all into like an array, and then I call that function. The function that basically was create an element for a move. I'm not really good at this explaining things,
But something that you mentioned that's important is that we need to make a network request for every single move. Because we need to get the PP of every single move. So that's going to pose some complexity. Cameron?
I just use the loop to call that function that calls PP.
Say that again? Call a function?
I use a loop to call the move. So loop runs 4 times, and each time it catches a new random move from the
Okay. So yeah, so we're going to need a for loop. Or a loop. It doesn't have to be a for. We're going to need a loop. Yes, so here.
I did that different way. I did a chain of start ends.
That's a good one, yes. You could do in here, like when you get the single Pokemon, right? But do you have you have 5 or 4 dot ends?
One for each move.
One for each one?
2 for each move. So one because I didn't fetch, so I have to obfuscate parts of the object.
Oh, I see. So
There's 8 dot ends, and they're circular because.
Oh, they're recursive?
The initial argument of the first dot end is also the return of the first dot end.
Okay. Oh, I think I see what you mean. So, I think, does it work? As all, yeah, it doesn't matter how fast it doesn't run. So yes, the main point is that it runs. So here, so what that hint that Sergio gave us is we'll need to do, well, to fetch the moves, we first need the Pokemon, right? We cannot fetch the moves unless we have the Pokemon with the moves array, right? Because otherwise, how would we tell? So that tells us that we will need to do that operation here, because this is the point where we have the Pokemon, right? So let's do let moves equal Pokemon dot moves, right? So here we have the moves, and then we'll need to make a network request for each one of them, or at least the first 5, right? So let's do that here. So actually, since this is like fetching the moves will take an amount of code close to this one, right? Since this is the code that we're using to fetch a single Pokemon. So I'm gonna do a function called fetch move. Here I'm gonna do this function will fetch only one move, but then I make it in a loop, and then it's gonna be able to fetch more by having it in the loop. So here, so what do we need? What information do we need to have to fetch a move? So here I'm gonna use the fetch function. What information do we need to the API URL, right? So let's do this. So let's do the URL similar to what we had here. Const URL equal right. So we will need actually not this here. We have the URLs in the Pokemon console. We're no longer console logging the Pokemon, but we know that the Pokemon has a property called moves, right? That's an array. And that array has an object inside with 2 keys. We were taking note of this here. Not here, here. Here. We have this, every move has a name and a URL. This is what we need. So I'm gonna copy this actually. So, and then we're going to have a loop. We're going to have a loop that will call this function 5 times or 4 times. And for that, each one of them, I'm going to pass in the move URL here. Let's just do URL. And let's do this for now. Like let's do console.log URL. Fetch move for now is just console log the URL. And then in here, what we want to do is we have the display Pokemon could be the first one or the last line. Let's do it here. I want to make a loop to loop 4 times. I'm going to do for let move equals 0. While move is less than 5 or less equal to 4, it's a better way. Move plus plus. Could have used I, but move is a little bit more descriptive. And then here, for every single move, what I want to do is, well, I need to do let move URL, access the move URL, which we found to be at this Pokemon. Oh, actually, I already have the moves. I already have the moves array, so that's this guy here. Moves at index. In this case, my index is something called move, and I'm only iterating over the first 4. Move, and then the move property, because we saw that what we find at that index is an array with 2 properties. One property called move, and the other one I don't even remember. But the move property has another object. Wait, let's actually make sure of that. Let's go here to the network. We can find here the 2 Pokemon. See, moves is an array of objects where each object has two properties, move and version group details. And we're interested in move that URL and the name actually too. Yeah. But for now, let's just focus on the URL. Yes. This? Oh, but this. For it's not gonna be this one. It's going to be the one that I get from here. Move URL. So then let's do, for each one, let's call our function fetch move. Fetch move. And I'm going to pass in the move URL. Let's do this. So instead of doing that, then to fetch a single Pokemon, I'm also, right after that, I want to fetch the moves. Or I want to fetch 4 moves. From that Pokemon, the first 4. I'm seeing that this is going to have a problem if the Pokemon doesn't have 4 moves. We're going to get some undefined if by chance we get a Pokemon that doesn't have 4 moves, that has less. But here, to prevent that, I could just do an if statement here, making sure that the length is at least 4, and if it's less than 4, then just run a different version of the loop where it will run as long as we have moves. Now let's just do it like this. Remove or fetch move, and then here I'm just going to console log the URL. So here I'm going to do move URL. So here we fetch the Pokemon. We have the arrays, or the moves array here. Now we loop over that with this for loop. And for every single one, we do fetch move with that URL. Fetch move is this function right here. It's expecting a URL. And for now, we're just going to console log the URL. So let's see if we have console log displaying URLs for moves. Having that saved, we have 8 URLs for 8 moves. Oh, actually, do we have? No, we have more than that. So, oh yeah, that's because it's 0 to 4. Yeah, this will need to be less than 4. Yes, and we have that. So after we get back from lunch, let's just finish this and then move on from there.